Welcome to Locality's Making Bank podcast, where we continue our exploration of South Florida's entrepreneurial landscape with host Keith Costello, co-founder and CEO of Locality Bank. Sit back, relax, and let South Florida visionaries guide you on an entrepreneurial journey from tribulation to triumph, sharing the very stories that have shaped them.
Ben Genet, welcome to Locality Bank's Making Bank podcast.
Thank you.
This is going to be a good one. And Ben and I have known each other for quite a while, and I am really excited about having him on the podcast today. He's had an amazing career, and he's got a great story to tell. So let's get started.
Awesome.
So we usually start out just talking about your family and, you know, your upbringing, where you grew up. Tell us about your family.
So all my grandparents immigrated to this country in the early 1900s. My mother's family is from Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, Luzerne, Pennsylvania. My grandfather had a horse and buggy and sold goods all over the coal mining hills out there until he met my grandmother, who forced him to stay home and opened a store. And they had a dry goods store. And my father's parents ended up opening a kosher butcher shop in Hoboken, New Jersey. And my grandmother, Rose, said, "Harry, let's move to the city." So he sold the butcher shop and opened another one and realized he could make more money selling a butcher shop than he could ever by running it. Ultimately, they moved to South Florida, and they were all entrepreneurial, all my grandparents.
Wow. And then how about your parents?
My father wasn't particularly entrepreneurial, and he went to law school and called himself an attorney and made a little bit money in real estate and ended up buying some great real estate. Too bad he didn't live to see the value of it. And my mom was always entrepreneurial. She was a badass. She lived in scarcity. Nobody wanted to do business with her more than once. She was a warrior. And she reveled in the fight and the battle, never considered the other in the transaction. And she was awesome, except when you were getting your ass run over by her.
So if you were on her team, if you were on her side, it was
great.
There was
no side. She didn't think of it that way. I'm going with, if you were going with her that day, you were with her. But she didn't know anything about a team.
It was her.
It was her, and so many great things and so many things that I've learned from her what not to do.
Interesting. That's great. So as you were growing up, did you because of the entrepreneurial grandparents and your mother, were you working or were you experimenting with any businesses? Or
when I was 10 years old, my 18-year-old brother, Larry, jumped out of an airplane and the parachute didn't open and he died.
Oh, wow.
And that messed up my family, and my mother got lost in misery. And at 14, I got shipped off to boarding school. So real estate was discussed at our dinner table all the time. And I had a paintbrush in my hand and was involved. My mother ran a little motel, and there was always some deal she was working on. My father, too, he did a land sales deal in Kissimmee in the 60s, I think. My recollection of all this stuff is not great because I went away at 14 and never really came home.
Okay. And then what transpired after you graduated from boarding school?
Well, I'll go back.
Yeah.
What transpired in boarding school was I got sent to a school with great students, and I went to a mediocre elementary school, and I was a lousy student.
Okay.
So I couldn't spell, still can't. I couldn't write. In my high school, everybody studied hard and I couldn't. And insecurity built up significantly in me, and I developed a lot of self-doubt. Through that, anger sprouted. Wow.
Well, that's so it's interesting that now looking back, you're able to share that experience, because that must have been very difficult.
Most of my life was a reaction to my brother's death and the subsequent 5 or 6 years where I was alone and in need of a lot of things that I did not receive. Interestingly, in Strategic Coach, they taught me something really great, that you cannot change the past, but you sure could change the way you see your past. So now I look back on that time and I realize I would not be me if I did not go through those experiences. And I don't look at it so negatively, but well into my 50s, I thought that was the worst time of my life and it sucked. And I was angry about lots of it.
Wow.
And those that loved me paid a big price for the way I saw myself for a while.
Interesting. And so eventually you obviously got out of boarding school. It was a struggle,
so
I guess.
I finished high school in 3 years and spent a year in Israel and started to come into my own. Then I went to college in New York. And even though I had lots of insecurity, I was a rock star in my own mind. I was an amazing C student. I could get a C in any course. The only A's I got in college were in wrestling, Division III, and played intramural hockey and girls and weed and friends. And I had great times and a lot of self-doubt. And then in an effort to avoid getting a job, I went to law school in Miami.
Okay.
And I didn't want to go to Miami. I wanted to stay in New York, but I did not get into the law schools in the city.
Okay.
So I'm like, all right, I guess I'm going to Miami. And I was actually mourning leaving New York. And my brother David and I were on the UM campus for 5 minutes. I was like, screw New York. This is awesome. And I never looked back. So
that's awesome. So you go to University of Miami, get your law degree, and do you then go out and get a job as a lawyer, or what do you do next?
So I sure never wanted to be a lawyer. And I struggled a lot. Flunked the bar a couple of times, eventually passed it, finally got a job. This is many years later, 3 years after law school, got a job at a lousy law firm where I lasted 5 months before I got fired for telling my boss publicly what I thought. And it was really hard to come home to my wife and her parents, very humbled, and say, I got fired
So
today.
we skipped over that. So somewhere there, you got married.
Oh, yeah. So I graduated law school and I sold insurance. I tried to sell real estate twice, once residential, once commercial. I tried importing shoes from China and selling them to the islands. I tried multiple things to avoid being an attorney, all the while studying for the bar exam and reveling in the humiliation of failing it because I never failed anything before in my life. Ultimately, I passed and got admitted to the bar. I met my wife in 87, got married in 88. I was 26 years old. It's my first monogamous relationship. And she proved to be the love of my life, but the first 20 some years of my marriage were very challenging, mostly because I was in the relationship.
Wow. And that probably took a while to realize.
I was very good at blaming myself as well as those around me. So I don't have that gene where I deflect blame and think of myself so great. Self-doubt causes a lot of pain, but you also accept the fact that you're part of the problem. In my second year of college, I dated a girl who gave me a book called Illusions by Richard Bach. And it was about being a free spirit. And she wrote in it to a free-spirited guy, Love Ann. And I studied up on what that meant. And I realized that's what I wanted to be. And I went to work and I started the martial arts and I studying Taoist philosophy. And I got a lot of therapy at multiple times from different people at different times. And I was committed to growth and change and improvement. And I'm happy to say that it only took me 25 years to think I have my shit together. But I'm a work in progress, and I've never stopped pursuing inner peace and happiness.
That's great. So in the process of, so you're married now, you have going to law school, you told your boss, so you're out of work at the law firm now, and you're again, you've got a wife. Do you have any children at that point? Yeah.
No.
Okay. No kids.
We had no children yet, but we were having many miscarriages.
Okay.
Lots of frustration. Our first child was our first baby. Our fourth pregnancy. We
was
had
the
a
first.
child.
Wow.
And a lot of pressure, a lot of fear.
Sure.
And, life happens to all of us, even though we expect it to be so perfect.
Yeah. And so what did you decide you were going to do to support
So while
your
I was in
family?
that crappy job, a friend of my brother's came to me and said, screw law, build warehouses. And I said, awesome. What's a warehouse? So he took me out to lunch. I remember he had this old BMW convertible.
Do you remember this person's name?
Eric Tesler. He built warehouses in South Florida. So he showed me what warehouses were. He showed me what he did and that he was building them. I found a European investor to give me $1 million. And I started building my first warehouse in 1988.
How did you find, hold on to that. How did you find you just act like that's so easy to do. How did you find a European investor to give you $1 million?
So my brother met his son in Israel in 1979. In 1980, he came to the US for the first time, barely spoke any English, and crashed in my apartment in New York. Subsequently, we got stoned together 1,000 times and became good friends and loved each other deeply. And this was his father.
Wow. So there's a lesson in there somewhere, right? About building relationships with people. And
yes, as a matter of fact, there's nothing more important in my entrepreneurial journey than the relationships, because this guy, Eric Tesler, helped me build my first warehouse. And after I left my job, I opened my own law firm and brought in business. And for those 2 years before I left the make-believe practice of law, I bought and sold a dozen foreclosed houses, and I bought a 12-unit apartment building with my bar mitzvah money. And every penny that my wife had saved and whatever I could get my hands on.
wow. So that was the beginning of real estate for you.
That was the beginning of real estate for me. And in October of 91, I shut down my law practice. It was the SNL Crisis. And I bought a 39,000-foot storage bay with offices upstairs from the FDIC, and they called it functionally obsolete, and I paid $14 a foot.
Wow. You still own it?
I sold it in 19.
Okay. Well, so you hold it a long time.
For $145 a foot.
That's a nice deal. So it was at the start of Genet Property Group, 1991?
Really, it started with building this building.
Okay.
Except to get from 1988 to 1991, you had to go through the SNL Crisis.
Yeah.
Where I thought I was going to lose that building that I built.
Okay.
And I thought I was going to be dead broke and screwed.
Okay.
Because the market crashed, and I had a 6,000 feet out of a 36,000-foot warehouse that was not built out. That was built out. The rest was not.
Oh.
And I'm sitting there with this building with a 1,500-foot tenant and a mortgage that I signed personally on, and with the old Trans Florida Bank, right?
Yeah.
And at 2 over prime. And
Yes.
and I was scared. And my partner, who saw real estate as a commodity, just like a stock, and the market crashed, he wanted to sell and dump it. And he had his name on the mortgage with me, and I was petrified.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I got the bank to release him from his name on the personal
mortgage. Uh-huh.
And he walked. And then I got my family to put up $150,000, and they were nice enough to take half the deal for that money and charge me 9 points. And then I had another partner, 50-50 in the deal, but our basis was significantly lower. And then I put the Miami Herald in 15,000 feet, and I rented the other 15,000 feet to Charlie's Pastries, a Jamaican baker. And that deal almost died because the government gave him such a hard time opening his business, and bureaucracy was screwing small business once again. And eventually he got in, and I still own that building today.
Wow.
And it's been cash flowing.
And you developed
like
that building.
I did. I developed that building.
During that period of time in the SNL crisis.
At the worst time for owning real estate ever.
Yeah.
I just didn't know it because I didn't know what a crash was. I didn't know what a boom was. I had no prior experience.
Wow.
Eric said, build a warehouse. I said, okay.
Right. Wow. So you get through that, raise more money, make your way through that tough time, and you still own that building.
So October 91, I shut down my law practice, and I was a real estate guy.
Okay.
I bought a pair of bolt cutters because if somebody didn't pay me, I'd clip the locks off their bays and just open their door. I wasn't really worried much about getting sued for any liability issues because I had nothing for anybody to take. And I went to work, and I started buying real estate. And since then, I bought 64 commercial properties, and I sold 27. And when you think Small Bay, think Genet. When people think of my company, they're not thinking about me. It's a company that will survive me.
So you have gone out, and I know this from our Vistage group and really know your business very well, but for everybody who's listening, so you went on to continue really investing in that particular property type, right?
So the main property type that I buy is small bay industrial, but I've done 4 apartment deals. I've done 4 or 5 office deals. I've done 4 or 5 shopping center deals. The most money I ever made was in the crash of 08, where I bought 402 apartments and that were falling apart and bad and paid next to nothing for them.
So it's interesting how you kind of got your start. You were, because there's a lot of people who listen to what we're doing here who are, they're just getting out of college, or maybe they've been out working for a couple of years, and they're wondering, just like you were at that time in your life, what are they going to do? And maybe they've started on something that's not working out. How did you happen to really? Do you think it was? I guess, how did you find the thing that led you to become successful?
So I was blessed that I did not allow all the fear that I had to stop me from moving forward. I did a lot of things in my life that I was fearful of, and I went after it anyway because I was wrought with fear. So I was 30 years old when I said, wow, I'm a real estate guy. This is what I want to do. But between law school, so I graduated around 24 and 30, I was struggling. I knew I didn't want a job. My worst nightmare was to get a job. I had a one for 5 months, and I was not a good employee, and he was not a good employer. And I struggled to find my way.
Yeah.
So you just got to keep plowing forward. I mean, most people do not know what they're going to end up and what they want to do when they get started. If you get a job as a lawyer or a doctor or something like that, and that's your plan, I guess you could see your future in some way or another. But for most people in the world, even those in the regular workforce, have no idea how it's going to play out. I'm sure your life didn't work out the way you planned.
No.
I mean, you never thought of yourself as an entrepreneurial guy that was going to open multiple banks.
Right. Yeah. It's interesting the way things work out. Right. But that's, I think that is a good message for people, because I know we both have kids the same age too, who, they're looking at their lives trying to say, and they look and they say, well, this is, they'll look and just see what we're doing and say, oh, this just happened, but it's a tough, I think it is. And listening to your story, it is a really tough time that you go through during that period of time when there are some people, I think they're very unique, who know, but they're few and far between. I think most people end up like you, like me.
There are a lot of times in our life, transitory periods. Transition is weakness. And it's that way for everybody. So we just have to plow through it, and who knows where we go. The other thing is so many people are so impressed with themselves that they've done so well. If I started my business 5 years prior, the SNL crisis would have wiped me out. If I started my business in '03, the crash of '08 would have wiped me out. So my success, and I've had a lot of success, is not just based on me. It's based on, you could call it luck or God's inspiration. I have no idea what you want to call it, but shit happens in life to everybody. So, Gladwell talks about this in his book. If you were born, your birthday's at a different time, you end up developing differently and end up differently. And it's just fascinating how I was really blessed. I got a taste of a crash. I got my ass kicked. I went through fear again for the 100th time that I'm going to be a failure and it's not going to work out. Got through it. And then '08 came and there I was all over again.
Right.
Ask me about '08.
Tell us about '08.
So '03, I started to make real money for the first time. By '06, I was so intelligent and so smart. I was like a friggin' peacock. I invested money in everything, and I concluded that just because I put my money there, it was going to be successful. So the market crashes, and I'm losing money all over. I had a hard lending equity business. I got my ass kicked. I had all these investments in oil wells and coal mines. I did so much stupid crap with my money, and I'm losing it. In the beginning of 2010, my wife said to me, "What's going on? You used to go out with your sword and shield to conquer and to be a businessman, and you knew nothing. You had no money, you had no experience, you had no relationships, and you were out there like a badass. And you've turned into a little pussy." And I looked at her. She goes, "You're walking around saying, it's the economy. It's the economy. What happened to the guy I married?" So, nothing like getting your ass kicked yet again. So anyhow, I thought about it deeply, and I realized that was true. And I got myself together, and I started taking deep breaths, and I worked on it, and I talked to people about it. And at the end of 2010, I found 402 apartments for $26,000 a door. And getting a loan on these apartments was hard, and getting anybody to invest in this deal was hard. Everybody was scared. The market was so constricted. And oh my gosh, that's the perfect time to buy, right?
Yeah.
So you bought things for pennies on the dollar. And 2010, I bought that. 2012, I bought Maxanim in Miami for $42 a foot, 218,000 feet of small bay industrial in Cutler Bay, 99 code violations. 2014, I bought Hollywood Medical Center, a defective medical office building that was easily fixed. It was just operated by unscrappy professionals who don't know how to cut expenses and make things profitable. And those deals transformed my life.
And that was a wake-up call from Dorit.
Well, yeah, I mean,
she called you out.
She did, and I'm great. I think one of the greatest things I've ever done in my life was pay attention to appropriate criticism.
Yeah, that's great.
Because I'm wrought with imperfections. I'm a good learner, and I'm very focused on improvement. And those deals turned out to be unbelievable.
What was the toughest time you've gone through in business? Was it '08? Was it the SNL crisis? I mean, as you think back,
I was scared shitless on both of those times. So I didn't know anything in the SNL crisis.
Okay.
I didn't even know what a crisis meant. So, or what an SNL was. So, '08 was really hard. I had
because you have more to lose, probably. Too.
I had a lot to lose. I did not lose one piece of real estate.
Oh, that's great.
And my core business really didn't suffer that much.
Okay.
It was internally. It was that fear inside of us that's, that fear could drive you forward or it could make you contract. And I was always using fear to guide me forward. And there I contracted and she kicked my butt and I went out. And It just drove me forward. So that was one of the harshest times.
Wow.
But looking back, I realized there's so many different times I was so scared and freaked out that things were so bad and got angry and lost it. And I don't even remember what those things were. So now at 60, I'm like, when things go wrong, I'm like, okay, we're going to deal with it and we're going to get through it because I've done it 50 times before. But when I was young, I didn't know that the conclusion from all these crises would be okay eventually. And it just made me crazy. So my message, if I am to anybody, is yeah, shit happens. You'll get over it. Just relax. If it's not cancer, you're going to be fine. It's just financial issues. Every business has them many, many times.
I love that because I've experienced the same thing. And I think as we get older and we look back and we've gone through kind of some really tough times and you survive them. But at that moment, you think, it's the end of the world. But you get through it and everything's okay. And the sun comes up and it's another beautiful day. So, I mean, I think that younger people tend to, and I know we both did, obviously when we were younger, you take that on and you worry and there's so much fear and it's also so counterproductive. And I think just being calm and continuing to, as you did, keep focused on what you're doing. And I hope most people have a partner like your wife that when they need that kick in the ass, there's somebody there to give it to them. Who else helped you? What other mentors? You've mentioned one or two already, but.
I mean, I had a lot of people in my life that helped me, but the biggest transition in my life was understanding that I was raised in scarcity and I needed to get to abundance. And I didn't understand what that was. And there's a guy sold me insurance in my 30s. His name was Howie Bienenfeld. I met him on the board of my synagogue. And we ended up becoming great, great friends. And he taught me so much. He told me he loved me one day. And I said, you can't love me. You love 150 people. And he said, yes, I do love 150 people. And I'm like, well, that's not possible. You could only love 3 or 4 people in your life. I saw everything as limited, everything as scarcity. You can't love that many people. You can't do business with so many people. You can't make money for other people and have that help you. My whole view was ass backwards. And he ended up taught me a lot, constantly taught me. And then he ended up getting me to go to strategic coach, which I've been in for 25 years. And being in a position where one day a quarter, I work on making my future greater than my past. I'm working on going to abundance, from scarcity. That changed me in the most profound ways. And I would attribute that one step putting me in a platform of growth, not just me trying to grow with reading books and studying, but going to school to help me grow was really transformative in my life.
And you've mentioned strategic coach a couple of times. Tell people what that is so they are familiar.
It's an entrepreneurial training school by Dan Sullivan. You could see his podcast online, and it was just so powerful.
And you've done that 25, you're still involved in strategic coach.
One day a quarter, I fly to Chicago. It's a pain in the ass. And I'm like, oh my God, why am I doing this? Check into a hotel. Everything is a pain. And then I'm sitting there, and by 11:30 in the morning, I'm like, I got so much out of this. It's worth it. I could go home right now. Because no matter what I'm dealing with in my life, it helps me think clearly. It puts me in a position where I am willing to receive and have people that have gone through so much. And I realize all of us in business are doing the same thing. Our businesses are very different, but it's all identical. How you treat people, the relationships you create, how you see the world, how you see yourself. It's all the same.
And you've also been involved in Vistage. We're in the same Vistage group. Can you talk about Vistage a little bit?
I'm in Vistage for 20 years, 2 different groups. It's an entrepreneurial, it's a CEO group. It's not really entrepreneurial exactly, but there's more practical applications. So this week we had a meeting and somebody was talking about marketing, and I'm 62 running my business my whole life, and she was talking about stuff I didn't even understand. And I'm going to hire her. I'm going to bring her into my business. I'm going to spend 20 grand. And hopefully we'll pick up a couple of things. And it's going to be powerful.
I sent Ryan all the slides, by the way. He was, it's like, where's Keith today? So you've given a lot of good advice, but any other things that you would say to somebody who's a listener, who's trying to figure out their future?
So a couple of things. Until 2005, the only people that invested with me were family.
Okay.
And then in 2005, I started having people put their money in my deals. And that was another transformative day in my life, because now I have probably 70 investors, and it's really about making money for them more than myself now. It's become fun, and the high five is way more powerful than the money. So I got a couple of pieces of advice. One, spend less than you make, because no matter how much money you make, if you spend it all, you're going to be broke. And I watch so many people succumb to desire for physical things more than building a future for themselves.
Good advice.
The other thing is get involved in community activity and charity. My net worth would not be half of what it is today if I wasn't involved in charitable activities. So that deal I talked about, the apartment deal in 2010, I made an offer for $10,400,000 on the deal. The lawyer for the seller recognized my name. I worked with his wife on a charity project. He helped get me the deal. I was the second highest bidder, not the highest. If I didn't work in that charity with his wife, who I barely knew, and she didn't mention my name, I would have not gotten that deal. And my whole life, financial life, would have been different.
Wow.
So in 1999, I met a guy, and then in 2005, David gets me to go to Ethiopia, and I get involved in these Ethiopian charities. And it was great. And the relationship blossomed, and we were good friends, and we always talking about doing business together. And then in 2019, the phone rings, and he said, I found 492,000 feet of industrial in Tampa. I don't know industrial. I'm an apartment guy. Let's go look at it.
David Garfinkel.
Yeah. And we ended up buying 7 more deals, and it was an amazing thing. Also, with Jared, he was on one of your podcasts. I met him in a charity event.
Jared Elmar. Yeah.
I helped him. He needed my help. He was young, and I went out to see a deal he was working on and gave him confidence to go buy a deal that worked out really good for him. And in 2018, he called me and said, I have 202,000 feet in Tampa. We should buy it together. And we did.
Wow. Yeah.
All of that. And all of these great relationships came out of charity.
That's a great message. And we've heard it from other people as well, that, being involved in the community, being involved, helping other people, it really pays off and helps, because those are the people that are doing things in the community. Those ones that are really engaged and involved in those different organizations. But you've been very philanthropic in a lot of ways. Tell us a little more about some of the things that you've done.
So I'm a vocal advocate for charity. So, here's my biggest thought. People drive fancy cars and they wear designer clothing and they have designer handbags. But when it comes to charity, people say, no, I don't discuss my charity publicly. I think that's bullshit. And I think when people talk about charity, they don't use numbers. You and I will talk about a real estate deal. I'll tell you it costs $5 million. We'll talk about this and the returns and this and that. But nobody talks about charity. I think that this is all a scam to be able to say you're philanthropic when you're not. And I think that when you talk charity, you should use numbers or a percentage of income or something like that, because it should be talked about. We should wear it as a badge of honor, just like a Prada bag or a BMW. And I just think that whole anonymity thing is used to let people off the hook. I see challenge as an obligation. The Hebrew word for charity is tzedakah, and it really comes from obligation. You have to be a righteous person, but it's not because you're wonderful. It's because it's an obligation. And tithing is really important. And I'm in. I didn't do it to get a lot of benefit, but so many benefits in my life have come through charity, social benefits, business benefits. And I continue to give money. I'm starting now to give way more than a percentage of my income because I have more to give. I'm not talking about what I'm going to give in the future. I'm talking about what I'm giving in the present. So I just committed to renovate a dormitory for $1.5 million in Jerusalem in a girls' school. And I built an auditorium in Gush Etzion in a city in Israel. And I built with my brother a gymnasium it's called the Gymnasium, by the way, in a local day school in Hollywood. And I love it. So fascinatingly, when you give, so much comes back to you. And it's not because your karma changes. It's because you get appreciated by people, or people like you better, or they want to be with you. And they pick up that phone and say, hey, I got a deal. Hey, Ben, what do you think of this? And that is so powerful. So a poor person doesn't care why you give charity. If somebody is hungry, if you gave charity for the wrong reason or the right person, that person needs to eat. Doesn't care. So I'm going to suggest that giving charity, and real charity, not fake charity, is powerful and is impactful. And even if you come to it for the wrong reason, it's a powerful thing in your life. And learn how to give, because when you open up your hand and you're thinking about other people, everything is better. Can I throw out a book?
Yeah.
And this is not my favorite book.
Okay, but
this is
throw
just
it out.
a book I read
We're
by
not gonna
Joe
hold you to that
Polish,
one.
who I met in Strategic Coach. What's in it for them? If you want to do business with somebody and you're thinking about, okay, what could I get from them? What could they do for me? This is how I grew up to think about business. You only want to do business with people that could help you. But the real way to do business with people is to think, what can I do for them? If you become the person that other people want to do business with, then your opportunities abound. Now, that was so hard to figure out. That took me a long time to get there. But now I'm thinking, who do I want to be? How do I position myself that somebody wants to do business with me? What's in it for them? That was a real cool thing.
That is great advice. So what do you think the future, as you look forward, and what things do where do you see things going for you and your business?
So my goal is to double my net worth twice every decade. Now that's a large goal, and I might not achieve it, but not at the expense of my lifestyle. So I'm at a point now where my lifestyle is way more important than making more money. And if I never made another dollar again, I would be fine. But I'm chasing deals like crazy. And my friends and family are saying, when are we getting our next deal? Because my friends and family members are in my deals. So they want more deals. And we've done really well so far. And I keep saying past performance is no indication of future results. And they say, that's nice. When are we getting our next deal? So, I mean, a bunch of guys that are in my deals and are looking for the next deal. And I like it. So I expect the market to be very volatile in the next year. I expect to find apartment deals because of people over leveraged at low rates. And now it's going to smack them in the head. And I've never been more liquid, and I am prepared to jump.
That's great. I would agree. I think you will find some opportunities coming up, as we were talking about in our group the other day. So any last advice before we go to the lightning round?
You just got to get in there and be in the game, because fortune favors the bold, and you don't get lucky if you don't have chips on the table. Now, you also take that risk of failure. And if you're not prepared to lose, then you need to get a job.
Well said. Okay, we're going to go to the lightning round, where you just give us a quick answer. We're going to hit you with a few questions. So let's hear, what is your favorite book?
Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse and Atlas Shrugged by Rand.
Good ones. Is there a song from your youth that is like your theme song, or from any time of your life that you rallied
Thunder
to?
Road Always Moved Me by Springsteen. I like it.
That's great. What is the best piece of advice you ever received?
Progress, not perfection.
From who?
That was something in Coach.
Okay, great. What are your thoughts on AI? Are you frightened about that, or do you think it's an opportunity?
I don't waste a lot of time worrying about it because it's coming and it's coming fast. I'm sure there's a lot of downsides and there's a lot of upsides. And I hope I live long enough to see really cool stuff.
It's a great attitude. If you could have dinner with anyone living or dead, who would it be?
Menachem Begin.
What is your favorite local restaurant?
Cafe Seville.
Wow. Okay.
You like that place?
I do like it. I haven't been there in a while. What's something you're grateful for today?
I mean, I have so many things, but my wife has got to be it. I've never been happier in my life, and I've never loved her more. So the fact that I made it here is just awesome.
That's really nice to hear. You've got a wonderful wife. What travel destination is on the top of your list?
I'm going to Israel next week, but I'd like to go to Japan.
Have you been there?
Never.
Never. Okay. Well, Drew, who works with us, that's his country. So if you want any good advice on Japan, he can help you out. What's someone you admire and why?
So my grandparents, my mom's parents, Sam and Sadie Bronner, they got off the boat and they kicked ass and they never looked back. And, you know, they just were like the American dream. They sent their daughters to universities when nobody was. And my mother was in the first class at University of Pennsylvania that allowed women in because it was during World War II and they needed to fill up the seats.
That's great. What is a new skill that you're learning?
It's not a new skill that I'm learning, but I'm working very hard at being a better listener. Hopefully by my 70s, I'll be good at
it. What is your favorite way to stay healthy?
I love working out. I work out every morning.
Excellent. And how can people get in touch with you, Ben? Somebody's got a good real estate deal or somebody wants to reach out to you?
My email is ben@genetgroup.com. That would be the best way because when you call my office and ask for me, you're probably not going to get me.
Okay. And you also have, you've written one book and you have a second book coming out, right?
Yes.
Tell us about that new book that you have.
It's called A Virtuous Cycle. It talks about the power of community engagement and charity, how it affects your life and creates wealth in your life in many ways. And I prove through my own experiences that the benefits to living a life like that are just so powerful. And it's really cool, and I'm very excited about it.
Well, thank you for being here with us today. It's really been enjoyable talking to you, and we've known each other a long time, but I learned more about you as we talk today. So thanks a lot,
Awesome.
Ben.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to Locality's Making Bank podcast. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform to catch the latest episodes, and visit localitybank.com today to learn more about all the benefits of banking local.